for some. In a video posted today, vandals attacked the 225-year-old memorial to Christopher Columbus in Baltimore. The clip's narrator accusing the explorer of genocide. Joining me now to talk about the left's crusade to rid America of historical monuments, the president's agenda, and much more, author and historian Doug Weed, former special assistant to President George H.W. Bush. Mr. Weed, good to see you.
Hi, Greg. Good to see you.
And my daughter, who's on the campus of Duke as a freshman, tells me they removed the likeness of Robert E. Lee from the famed chapel on Duke's campus. So is this thing going too far?
Slavery ended in Great Britain in 1833, but I doubt if you'll see mobs pour into Westminster Abbey to pull down the statues of those naughty kings. So part of this is history. I mean, most of the 19th century emancipators, Greg, would not fare very well by political standards today. Abraham Lincoln, for example, after he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, left 1 million slaves in bondage. And of course, George Washington owned slaves, famously so, but he refused to be king. And if he hadn't taken that step, there would have been no Barack Obama. So we had to have people who would take those initial steps, weak as they may seem to us today, to take us to liberty and to take us to the freedom we have.
Well, that hasn't stopped some people from making statements like Angela Rye, CNN political analyst. I'll quote her. "George Washington was a slave owner. We need to call slave owners out for what they are. So to me, I don't care if it's George Washington statue or Thomas Jefferson statue or Robert E. Lee statue. They all need to come down." So, Mr. Weed, by her standard, we'd have to demolish Mount Rushmore, wouldn't we? I think we have a picture in it because you're talking about Washington and Jefferson. Teddy Roosevelt's in there. I'm not sure that Angela Rye wants him gone, but there's Lincoln off to the right. You just spoke about that. I mean, Mount Rushmore gone. I guess we have to rename the nation's capital as well.
Listen, there's no end to this, and there is, Greg, as you know very well, a lot of hypocrisy. The Democrats, every year, their biggest fundraiser is the Jefferson-Jackson fundraiser. Andrew Jackson, whose statue appears in Lafayette Park, and he's waving his hat at the front portico of the White House. He was a slave owner. So, and many of the Democrat heroes, Margaret Sanger, who founded Planned Parenthood, has awful racist language, almost genocide against African Americans. And I think it's a very sad thing to make this an Afrocentric phenomena, slavery. All of Russia, Catherine the Great ruled the Slavs of Russia. And I think every young person in America, African American young person, should grow up feeling cherished and loved and know that this country loves them. And slavery is a terrible crime, but it's a crime that existed throughout the world. The name itself comes from the 9th century when Muslims forced huge numbers of Slavs into forced labor.
Right. Nancy Pelosi is utterly stunned that there are Confederate statues in the nation's Capitol building, and she now wants them removed. Of course, she's been there for, 30 years, and it just occurred to her. I mean, that's just...
Yeah, she walked by that statue of Robert E. Lee every day. And it was Lyndon Johnson, a Democrat president, and a Democrat Senate, and a Democrat House that voted to build a new dorm at West Point. And they called it the Robert E. Lee Dormitory at West Point. So right. The hypocrisy is rich. I think this might be an issue that backfires for the Democrats.
And then there's the 400 roads and bridges in federal buildings named after Democratic Senator Robert Byrd, who, of course, was a leader in the KKK, but Nancy Pelosi and her quintessential hypocrisy seems to have left that one alone. Doug Weed, we'll leave it for another day. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Greg.
We're coming